Good afternoon and welcome to BizTech's Asian Midday Market Watch, powered by the Smart Investor Singapore. It's Tuesday, the 13th of December, and we have Charu Chanana, market strategist from Saxo Markets, on our show today. Charu, as always, great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Brian. It's a pleasure for me as well.
Now, Charu, before we get your insights on how markets are performing, let's take a look and see what the numbers look like. We start with Bitcoin, which is at 17,163. It's up 1.37%. Ethereum is at 1,272.73. It's up 2.12%. Looking across the regional equity markets, we start close to home with you, Charu, at the SGX. The Straits Times Index is up 0.97%. Looking across the regional markets, the KLCI over in Malaysia is down 0.18%. Shanghai is down 0.11%. The ASX All Ordinaries is up 0.21%. The Nikkei is up 0.43%. The Hang Seng is up 0.69%. And rounding up the numbers, we've got the Kospi, which is down 0.18%. It's a pretty mixed bag, Charu. Tell us why.
I think it was expected to be because, we are in this waiting mode for the US CPI release later today. But as you can see, the outperformance is coming from the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, and that's obviously because they eased restrictions further today. So that was obviously sending some, positive sentiment around in Asia a little bit, despite the caution that we are in, because of the US CPI and the Fed meeting and so many other central banks meeting this week.
Now, Charu, I want to zoom in on the CPI number and the Fed meeting tomorrow itself. What are the expectations, and how will perhaps the CPI number today influence the Fed expectations of the size of the Fed rate hike tomorrow?
I think the size of the Fed rate hike for this month is, I think, pretty much certain. Markets are pricing in 50 basis points with a huge majority. So I think 1 month of, CPI print and just a day before we get into that Fed decision is unlikely to change that. I mean, there are expectations that this print will be softer. We've had lower gasoline prices. We've had supply chain concerns easing as well. And the retailers have been giving away some holiday discounts to clear up their inventories as well. But after the Friday's PPI report, I think there's some risk building up that we could still see an upside surprise as well. So, you can argue a case on either side, but I think the Fed kind of understands that they don't want to do premature easing. So they will still be sending a message that, 2023 rate hikes are not a possibility right now, despite that slowing inflation print that we've seen recently.
Now, Charu, I want to zoom in on the other end of the Atlantic, the UK. And we have some significant concerns around the UK energy situation. Walk us through that, and what are the implications for energy markets?
So I think I would just, take a step back here and re-emphasize, this is something we've been talking about a lot at Saxo, that the energy crisis, really needs some amount of issues being addressed to get a secure baseload. Now, UK was actually getting 30% of its energy supplies from renewables, but that has now come down to 6% because the wind is not blowing. So something as simple as that creates the vulnerability that we have right now. So they've had to go back to gas prices, and that is creating a lot of volatility in the gas situation as well, because obviously there is limited visibility on how much gas they can continue to get. So I think it's very important for Europe and for the world to kind of understand that you need a secure baseload of energy before you add on renewables to it, which can be a little bit more volatile. And we still need investments to go into that space. And that's also one reason why we think inflation will remain higher for longer into the next year as well.
So, Charu, you've just shared some very interesting insights that I think the majority of the audience never knew. That swing potential for renewables is, I never envisioned that it was so dramatic for the numbers that you talked about, over 20% to just 6%. that wrecks planning tremendously.
And that's why, you need to have some base load, that's what I'm saying. So, if you don't have a secure base load supply, these power prices can fluctuate so much, every year. You don't want to have a situation like that every year. Now, obviously, the situation has been bloated a lot because of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. But despite that, these are the structural issues. We have not had enough investment in the traditional energy sector, in oil and gas, for many, many years. So while we can all talk about going green and stuff, we do think that the focus on those ESG initiatives as well will return sometime in 2023 after being sidelined over the course of this year. But I think at the same time, it will remain very important to kind of ensure you have reliable baseload supply.
Now, Charu, still on the UK, we've got Bank of England decision coming up this week. Also, ECB. What are we watching out for?
So I think broadly, the consensus is again that there will be a downshift for the ECB, for the Bank of England as well, to a slower rate hike trajectory. So for both the banks, again, consensus and the money markets are actually pricing in a 50 basis points rate hike again. But my sense is that we could see a bigger split in the ECB and the BOE compared to the Fed, which is sounding a lot more unanimous. I mean, I would still be cautious. Even the Fed, for instance, this time can start to see more divisions because there is so much uncertainty about the path of inflation, about the path of economic growth from here. But still, I think in the Fed, Powell kind of drives it, and he appears to stay on the hawkish side of things, whereas ECB and BOE, I think the uncertainty is a lot greater for inflation, for GDP, and how things will pan out next year. Given this energy situation as well that we've just discussed, it obviously impacts Europe in a much bigger way than it does the US, because US still has its own domestic supplies for energy, and they don't have to really rely on suppliers from the rest of the world. So of course, given those uncertainties, I do expect a bigger split. There'll be people probably voting for lower rate hikes of say 25 basis points as well, but we could see some votes going for 75 basis points as well. So a lot of uncertainty in store still.
Now, on that note, Charu, thank you very much for your insights. Thanks for coming on the show.
It was a pleasure, Brian. Thank you. Have a good day.
Now, I'm Brian Fernandez, and we've been speaking to Charu Chanana, the market strategist from Saxo Markets, on BizTech's Asian Midday Market Watch, powered by the Share Investors Singapore. I'm Brian Fernandez. This video and podcast will be on our website, www.biztech.asia, as well as our social media platforms. It'll also be on our syndication partners, TV stations, radio stations, and websites. Thanks a lot for tuning in.